Gabby from the Boys and Girls Club Joe R. Lee, and today we're going to learn how to draw this cute puppy husky. So all you need to get started is a pencil, an eraser, a pen, and then if you have a gray colored pencil, that'll be great. If not, you can just use your pencil to shade with. Okay, so we're going to start with the pencil, and we're going to start finding the shapes. So I'm going to start with the head. I'm going to use light pressure with my pencil, and I'm going to do an oval shape for the head. Just like that. Next, I'm going to bring a U shape right below the head for the body. And you'll notice he's a little bottom heavy. So I'm going to add a little bit of width at the bottom to that U shape. There we go. Now for the legs, I'm just going to take a pencil and divide the shape in half. And my legs are going to be on either section, just two little curved lines facing inward, and then he's got square little paws. So there's the legs. For the tail, I'm going to do a curved line on the left side, and then I'm going to bring it down by adding these little spikes to it. That way it looks like he's got a big fluffy tail. From there I'm going to do this white fluff under the head. Kind of looks like he's wearing a scarf. So I'm going to take my pencil, start right at this spot below the oval, and I'm going to do an S shape onto this line, and then a curved line connecting back up to this point. So there's his little scarf. From here for the face, I'm going to do a vertical line just a little lower than halfway. And our nose is going to go right underneath there. So I'm going to do a triangle shape. Triangle with some soft edges to it. And then those J's kind of back to back. And I'm going to bring the bottom of the J shape out so that it looks like our puppy is smiling. Okay, now for the eyes. The eyes are the most important part. You can tell that's what makes him look so cute. So for these eyes, I'm going to start on this inside line. I'm going to do like a bracket type shape on either side to get us started. And then I'm going to do a curved line. Then I'm going to bring little lines in like that. So he's got some big teardrop eyes. Our puppy's also a little cross-eyed, as you can see. Makes him look cute, like he's looking up at you. Maybe he wants a treat or something. So I'm just going to do a curved line on the inside as the outer part of the eye, and then a half circle for that inside. There we go. Since his eyes are so big, you can see they're reflecting some light. So we got to add that little reflection in. So right in the top left corner, I'm going to do a little circle as that light reflection. Okay, so we're missing the ears. I'll do a little tick mark here where my ears are going to go, right in the middle of this half. And then these ears are like leaf shapes. They do stand straight up, kind of like he's paying attention. And you can make the ears nice and big. I love it when puppies have like really big ears that they haven't really grown into yet. Super cute. There we go. So I added the inside, some inside lines to that ear. Okay, so I think we're ready to just add a few more things. So you'll see the head shape. We have this little fluff kind of coming out on either side, and a little fluff here at the top. So we're going to go ahead and put that in. So I'm going to add just a little, kind of like a lightning bolt type line up at the top. And then right at that horizontal line that I made, that's going to be where the little fluff comes out on either side. There we go. I can also add a little extra fluff to the side of the scarf. And okay, I think that's we're good on fluff right now. So next thing is we're gonna mark out the parts that are gonna be gray versus the parts that are gonna be white. They're gonna stay white. So I'm gonna start at the nose, and you'll see that the bridge of his nose is gray. So I'm gonna bring up these lines, just going right in between the eyes. And then this is gonna come around. It dips in right at that horizontal line, and then it just loops around. Just like that. Okay, from there we got these little zigzaggy lines showing that he's got a white belly. There we go. So I'm gonna add little zigzags from that white fluff down to where the legs are. I'm also going to go ahead and give him just 2 little lines on his paws to make him look more like paws. And then for the gray part on the tail, just going to bring another curved line down. Okay, so I think we are ready to pick up the pen, and I'm going to go over all the pencil lines that I want to keep. So don't worry about those little guidelines, those are just there for us. So we're going to do all the lines we want to keep with pen, and then I'm going to jump over to my gray colored pencil, and I'm going to shade the parts that are going to be gray.
It's Miss Lee, and it's Lee's Lessons in Art. I work at the East Altamont Boys and Girls Club teaching fine art. Today, we're going to do some really cool wood sculptures. Okay, so you can see all the cool stuff we have here. We've got blocks of wood. These are actually fence posts that have been cut up. And these are I believe these are 2x2s that have been cut up in all different shapes. I've got chopsticks. I've got little blocks I got at the dollar store, 36 for $1. The other thing you can do is get their little wood kits at the dollar store and use the pieces and parts out of this. And you can just go outside. I went outside in my front yard and got twigs, and I also went outside and got some thicker wood outside, and then I went ahead and chopped those up into little bits. So let's get started. So the first thing that you want to do is plan. And what you want to do is make sure that your wood base is nice and heavy, because then that's going to hold up your wood. So you can see I've got 2 really nice wood bases here for my artwork. To do the planning, what you should do is turn your base to the side and then start stacking your pieces. So start planning your sculpture, because then that way you can see what's going to work the best. So I'm going to put that there, and this here, and this here. I had already chosen what I wanted for materials, and I actually want my chopstick to come off of here and create sort of an angle. And then I'm going to see if I can't get one of these very lightweight squares to hang out on there. And then I want to create a little bit more of a dimension and use some more of these little squares. And let's see if we can't get them to meet each other. using the hot glue. So that's kind of, I need to go a little bit over with these so that I can create some sort of thing like that with the hot glue. And then I want to add another chopstick because I want to maybe put these together and then they'll be out there and then maybe I can put my block on top of there. So this is what I want to do. So then what you do is you start gluing. So I'm going to pick my base up. I'm going to pick my first piece, and you can use wood glue or you can use hot glue. I like hot glue because it sticks really, really fast. So I'm going to use my hot glue and I'm going to put my first piece on my base. And I'm going to have to hold it for a minute to get it to stay. And if anybody's worked with hot glue before, it sticks really quickly. I like the low temp hot glue guns because you have a much less chance of burning yourself. You can still burn yourself, but it is not as bad as the other. If mom and dad do not want you to use a low temp hot glue gun, please go ahead and get some wood glue, or you can use this clear Elmer's. Works works just as well, but you have to keep in mind it's going to take you longer and you have to be a little bit more patient. It's going to take you a little bit longer for you to create your sculpture, okay? Because that glue takes a little bit longer to dry. So then I'm going to put this, I'm looking at my little layout that I've got down here, and I'm adding my objects here. I think that one needed to go up a little bit further. Oh no, I'm good. I was worried about my chopstick, and I'm going to put my chopstick in there because I want to know how that's going to fit with the rest of my materials. So I put a big chunk down there, and then I'm also going to put a little glue here to attach it to the side of my wood. Okay, the one thing you're going to notice with hot glue is you get little what I call cobwebs, and what you can do after you're all done with your wood sculpture is you can just go back and pull those little cobwebs right off. Sometimes they add a kind of a cool effect, but that just depends on how you want your sculpture to look. Okay, now I'm going to add my little block up there. So I'm putting a pretty good amount of hot glue on there. Okay, so I'm going to put my block. And then I'm going to start adding my little blocks. So I think what I'm going to do, since this has to go ahead and reach up to the top together, I'm going to go ahead and start my blocks on this side first. And I'm not actually stacking them completely together. I want them to be a little like they're kind of out of whack. I don't want them right smack dab on top of each other, because I think that that's going to add to the appeal of my sculpture, okay? What you do too is you want to make sure that you are doing something that's visually pleasing, okay? So you look at it and your eye will go in a certain way to the sculpture. You want it to be visually pleasing as well, okay? And that's a lesson in itself, I'll tell you, but we'll talk a little bit more about that when I get towards the end. So I'm coming up on the end, believe it or not, but that's because I've already planned out this sculpture. I know what I wanted to achieve. So I'm gonna go up this high, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just try out my blocks here and see how I'm gonna get them to match up. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little test here, and I'm gonna do a little test here before I glue them down to see how I'm gonna get those to match up. Maybe I'll get a little weird there, or a little unusual, and bring this in a little closer. Okay, maybe I'll do it like that. That's what I think I'll do. Okay, so let's put this one down. So there is some planning along with this. You do have to plan a little bit. Okay, so you got to kind of look at it, and here's the good thing. I really believe with hot glue that you could absolutely take it off if you had to. If you had to pull it off of there with the glue, I think you'd be able to do that. But all it takes is for you to do a little bit of planning. Okay, so I've got my blocks up there, and I think I'm gonna have this block kind of be the odd one out and make him at a different angle. And I think that that's gonna turn out to make my sculpture kind of interesting. Okay, so I'm gonna turn him to the side here. All right, I am almost done. Now the only thing I need to do is and you can see that my original plan to put these two together didn't really work. So do I want to do that? I don't know if I do. I think I might put it like this. When I'm looking at the direction of it, I could put it like this, and I really don't like that anymore. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to put my block on top of that one. And if I put a pretty good amount, and the top of my chopstick is flat. So if I put a pretty good dollop of hot glue on there, it's gonna stick pretty well. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. It's still a little wobbly. Up, I feel like I can feel it tightening up. Okay, now how cool is that? And then I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my stick in like so to create a little bit of a balance doing that. I don't know, I kind of like it like this. But you know what? That's something that I can kind of sit on and think of. So what do you think of that? So that's a way of using some shapes and making a really cool wood sculpture. Now I'm gonna make a really cool one out of natural materials. So my base is not a natural material, although obviously wood is, but I'm talking about natural wood. So I've got these cool pieces that I cut up, and I really like how they look. And I'm going to put them together on this base. So I want to make sure that I have them in the correct, I want to make sure that I've got them on there so all three of them can fit on there. This is going to be my base here. All right, so that's going to work. I'm going to leave that one there, and I'm going to go ahead and do my little tiny, this almost looks like a little stump seat here. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that on there with my hot glue. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get my big stump on there with hot glue. Okay, stick that in there. And hot glue is a nice thing for working with crafts because it's so quick and easy. Hopefully, you know, if mom and dad are with you, you should be able to do this with them. Okay, and these are only $2.67 at Walmart. And then you can get a bag of sticks for, I think, a couple bucks. Okay, so then I'm gonna go ahead and stick my other one in there. All right, so I've got my start. And then I'm gonna add this one. These two look like they were almost cut together. So it's looking like, you know what I mean? It's looking like it was almost cut at the same time. The other option I have is I could go rogue and I could take one of these cut pieces of wood and make my sculpture go like so. So I'm doing that type of thing. The other thing that I want to do when I'm adding onto this sculpture is I went out and I got little twigs, and I'm gonna add twigs onto this and just make it a very sort of outdoorsy looking, very natural wood looking sculpture. So you can see all the cool things that you can do. But you know what? Go ahead and get your wood, whether it's natural wood from outside or whether you can get Dad to cut up some blocks, or go to the dollar store. Okay, get your glue and get yourself a pretty cool base that you find around the house and have some fun.
This is Pia from West Sanford. The heat has inspired me to create a fan. Stay tuned and I'll show you how to make one. So there, friends, we finished our fan, so you can be cool.
Hello, I'm Miss Alana from the Universal branch of the Boys and Girls Club, and for today's fine art project we are going to paint a watercolor and acrylic paint full moon night scene. So we are going to learn how to paint the background stars, this watercolor full moon, and how to do trees. So let's get started. So the first material we will need is a piece of paper. It can be any size you want as long as it is a watercolor or thicker mixed media type of paper. And the next material we will need is a set of watercolors. It doesn't matter how many colors are in it because we really only need the yellow, orange, and red. So if you have a larger pack like mine, that's good. If you have a smaller set of just 6, that also works. And you will also need a cup of clean water. And the next thing we will need is a tube of black acrylic paint. It can be whatever brand you have on hand. And then you will also need a navy or dark blue type of acrylic paint. If you don't have a navy, you can make your own by mixing blue and black paint together. And the last type of paint that we will need is a white acrylic paint. You're also going to want a roll of blue painter's tape so we can tape our picture down to our board. And some paintbrushes. I have a round-headed paintbrush. It's called that because it looks round, right? I have one that's medium, and I have one that's smaller with a finer point at the end. And then I have another paintbrush which is called a flathead. It's called a flathead because the top of it is flat and makes a perfect line. Now you can have one the same size as mine or you can have one shorter. It doesn't really matter as long as we still have that flat edge on the top. So now it's time to go and grab all of our materials. And here is the list of everything we need. Once you have everything with you, we can start working on our painting. So now I have my piece of paper out on my board and I want to secure it to it so it won't buckle. So I'm going to grab my blue painter's tape and I'm going to put a strip of paint on each edge of the paper. And try your best to make it as even as you can on the edge because we want that little bit of space to create a nice white border on our paper. So now we can start the first step of our painting, and we're going to grab that pencil from our materials list. So now we can grab our painter's tape again, and this is what we're going to use to create the circle for the moon. So you can trace on the outer edge, or if you want a smaller moon, you can do the inside. And if you didn't have the painter's tape, you can use any kind of circular object in your house. So you can use like the lid of a jar or a cup. You can use the water cup that you have with you, just don't get the water onto your paper. Anything that's circular and is a good size to fit on your paper works well for this. So I'm going to use the roll of painter's tape that I had on me beforehand, and I'm going to put it slightly off-centered on my paper. Going to have a little bit of space on the right and a lot more space on the left, and that's just going to make our picture more interesting. You know, when things are off-centered, it can bring more attention. So I'll make a nice dark line tracing my circle so then we know where our moon is going to be placed. And you can see you have more space on one side than you have on the other. So now I'm ready to start using the watercolors. I'm going to grab my larger round-headed paintbrush and I'm going to dip it in the water and then add some water to my yellow paint. And I'm going to fill in all of this area or circular area of the moon with the yellow watercolors. The best way is to start with your edge and go all the way around that line we traced. And just take your time with it. You don't want to go too fast, and just try to stay in the lines as much as possible. So once you have the outline done, now you can just fill in the rest of our moon with the yellow. So that is the whole center, and now we're going to make sure we have a lot of paint on here. If you have too much, maybe you can wipe a little bit of it off with your paintbrush. And our next color is going to be the orange. So get the orange wet and get it on your paintbrush. And now we're mostly just going to use the orange on the edges. So I'm going to start up here and add some more on the bottom as well. Keep adding the orange paint as you go around to make sure you have enough color on your paintbrush. And then I'm just going to do a few more spots kind of in the middle of our moon as well. You can put them anywhere you want, just make sure you have some spots and some of the edges done. And now I just washed off my paintbrush. I took the extra orange paint off of it, and I'm just going to blend in the orange and the yellow a little bit on the corners of our spots and the corner edge of the moon itself. And just keep going back and forth, moving the orange and the yellow, blending everything together until you get it to look like what you want it to. And if you think, well, maybe it kind of looks a little washed out now, you can go back and add some extra orange on the highlight points. And now our last color with the watercolors is going to be red. So make sure you get a lot on your paintbrush, and we're just going to do a couple of dots and our edge in red. So I have one line going on this top corner, and you can see it's really starting to pool because I put a lot of the color on my paintbrush. And I'm going to do a few more spots and then this bottom edge as well. And you can see it's already starting to blend and bleed into our orange and yellow on its own. So same thing as before, I'm going to wash all of the color off of my paintbrush so then it's just the water. And I'm going to go in and swirl together our orange and our red color. And if you want to leave like a lot of red on it, you can do that as well. If you want more of the orange, this is the time you can go back and add more orange. It's really up to you how you want our orange moon to look like. But just keep blending and adding the colors that you like on it. Okay, so I am satisfied with how mine turned out. So now I am going to give this a few minutes to dry off. I'm not going to touch it. You can still see it's very watery and shiny in this area. So I'm not going to paint quite yet. I'm going to let everything dry and then we can start on our next part of this project, which is the acrylic paint part. So now wash your brushes and grab your acrylic paints. And then after a few minutes, you can see that our paper is now dry again. It's not quite as wet and shiny looking as it was before, which means we can start working with our acrylic paints. So I have the flathead brush that I talked about previously, and I'm going to grab my navy blue acrylic paint. And the first thing we're going to do is outline the moon itself. So you're going to go all the way around on that pencil line that we had, and using the flathead, which makes a really nice line, we're going to slowly drag it across and outline our moon. It's important to take your time while doing this part because we're trying to not get it in the actual moon itself. And by going slow and dragging and having a lot of paint on your paintbrush, it'll give you that really nice crisp line that we're going for. And if you maybe get a little bit on your moon itself, you should just be able to wipe it away. Because it is watercolors and not the acrylics, it's going to rest on top of that color for a little bit and give you just enough time to wipe it off and fix your mistakes. So now that I have my outline of the moon done, I'm going to fill in the rest of our paper with the navy blue acrylic paint. And you can use that flathead paintbrush for this part too. It has more of a wider surface area, so it's going to be a little faster and a little easier to fill in that whole background area. And while we're getting these edge areas of our paper, we want to make sure that it has a lot on there, so then we will have that crisp line when we take off the paper. And you want to make sure you're adding just enough acrylic paint that it is becoming dark enough. You don't want a lot of white coming through underneath it or it looking uneven. So if you're finding that maybe it looks a little bit uneven, just go back and add another coat of your acrylic paint on top of it and you'll be good. So I can see with mine that I have some lighter areas versus some other darker areas. So I'm just going to add some more of the navy acrylic paint onto my brush and then touch up these areas that I think need some improvement. And then just some final touches, making sure we're being really careful around our moon area so that we don't get the navy blue background onto it. And now I am done with our background. So we're going to let this dry a little bit as well, just like we did before with the watercolors. We're going to let it dry so then it's not quite as shiny anymore before we start our next part, which is the trees. So now that that has dried, the next step we're going to do is our background area with the trees. So I have my black acrylic paint on my flathead paintbrush, and I'm just going to do a straight-ish line at the bottom to create the ground. And now to create the trees, I'm going to get some more black paint on my brush, and I want to make sure it's nice and straight and flat, and I'm going to do straight lines going from the bottom to about the middle area of our paper. So holding my hand very steady, I'm just going to do a quick line. I'm going to do a short one, and then I'm going to do a taller one. With this part, you can decide how tall or short you want your trees to be, but it looks more interesting when you have a variation in the height of the trees themselves. But you also don't want to cover up our moon too much either. So you want to fill up the whole bottom of the paper with your trees and adjust any of them if you want them taller than the others as well. So now I have all of my trees lined up, and you can tell which one starts from the bottom of it. And what we're going to do is use our flathead paintbrush again, and by doing short motions, like stippling kind of, going back and forth on our paper with that flat edge, we are going to create the texture. So you can try it on like another piece of paper or the side of your paint first before we do it, but it's just that back and forth motion to create some kind of like sparse lines for the tree. Starting with my smallest one first, I'm just going back and forth, left to right, and lightly tapping the black acrylic paint onto my paper. And then once I get near the edge, the top of the tree, the pointy part, I am putting it angled so then it creates a point instead of having it the flat area going back and forth. So adding more acrylic paint and doing the same thing as we just did for our first tree. And since this tree is actually bigger than the other one, it is going to cover up the trees next to it a little bit more, and that is completely fine because that's how trees are. They're whiter at the bottom and then smaller at the top. So I'm reaching my like halfway point of the tree now. I'm starting to do my stippling a little bit smaller, and now I'm going to go in with my paintbrush angled to the side and add that triangular top of the tree. And then I have a slightly smaller tree next to it because the bigger tree is covering half of it. You only really need to do that one half that is going to show up on the paper. So just fill that in, make sure you have a lot of paint on your paintbrush, and do the tip area. You could even use just the very edge of the paintbrush, that like corner area, and then that can make the tip of the tree as well. And moving on to the next tree, we're just going to keep following our steps all the way across our paper and fill in each one of the trees. And as I'm at the top of the tree, again, angling my brush, and I'm going to get some more paint and fill in those areas that were a little bit more sparse. And you're just going to do the same thing to every tree all over your painting. So I'm going to go a little faster with these ones and finish up the rest of the picture. And then you can leave some space in between the trees so then you can see the differences in the heights, or you can make some of them really thicker, really bigger than the other trees, and then really pointy at the top, or maybe even really full. All of this part is up to you guys. You can follow my lead, follow my example, but this is your time to be creative and then add your own twist to it. And I'm at my very last tree now, so I am going to fill it in and make sure it's going all the way over the edge where our tape is, so then that whole area will be the black of the tree, and then going on the side of the paintbrush to make our edge top. And once we have that done, we're going to let it completely dry, just like we did before. And then we can start on our very last part, which is our background with the stars. So wash your paintbrush and let it dry. So we just waited a little bit. You can see that it has dried a lot already, and we will grab our next color and our final color, which is the white acrylic paint. And for this part, this is when you can grab your smaller paintbrush with the pointed tip on it. If you don't have a smaller one, you can just use the one that we did before, and we're going to do some dots all over the sky to create some stars. So to create the stars, you're going to want to have a lot of the acrylic paint on your brush, and you can do some small little ones first, or you can press down harder with your brush and get some thicker dots. Just start from one area of your paper and move along to the other side. You can even add some little starbursts that are basically just drawing across. You have one line going up and down, and then one line going back and forth, and that will make a little starburst. Or you can even do the pointed type of star on your picture here. Again, this part is up to you, how many stars you want to do. Just fill it in for what you think looks good. And now I'm going to start on my other side. You want to make sure you're kind of getting those areas between the trees as well, and having a variety with your size and your shape of the stars. And I am in the last corner now, and I'm being very careful to not put my hand on top of the other white dots and spread it around everywhere. And then just a few more stars up in this corner, and I will have it done. Nice. Okay, so this is my painting. I'm just going to give it another minute to finish drying off before we peel off the painter's tape from our board. And you just want to make sure these thicker areas of paint are dry before you do any of that. And now you can see everything has completely dried, and we can take the paint off of our paper and reveal our final product. So you can already see by having that little bit of white on our paper from the tape is giving it a nice border type of look. And you might have had a little bit of bleeding in some of the areas, but that's completely fine. And this is our final product. So you can see there we got some really nice marbling of the colors with our watercolors, but we also got some really sharp color with the black acrylic. So that's the big difference between using a watercolor and an acrylic, and it gives us a nice variety in our looks and textures. So that is it for today's lesson. I hope you guys had a lot of fun and enjoyed making this painting with me, and I hope to see you again next time.